So this is the O-ring that I originally tried from O-ring kit from Harbor Freight. It didn't work. Actually comparing it to the McMaster one that I ordered, you can see it's a lot thicker and it's the proper diameter and it fits around here a lot more snug and sticks out a lot more. If you come over here, actually sticking it down into the base, it fits a lot more snug. As a second line of defense, I'm using Permatex high temp thread sealant. It seems pretty resistant in a lot of different applications that I've used it for. I've used it for like water methanol fittings, fuel fittings, oil fittings, all that kind of stuff. So what I was noticing was happening before was I have this side, the pressure side, capped off, and then I was pumping compressed air into the inlet, and I had the cap on and it was bubbling out the top, so that means that the air was leaking past that and getting into this oil chamber. So if air leaks past there, then oil would also leak past there. And this is the tool that I made. I thought about welding these on there, but then I thought if the pins shear off, then you have to grind it off and redo the whole tool. So I found these tapered pins that fit pretty nicely into here and slide in from the bottom here. Then of course you just kind of start to tighten this down with some needle nose and it'll get stiff. You'll feel it getting, get it as tight as you can with the needle nose. And then stick your pins into here, slide it over, and just tighten it down. And this thing, compared to the other tools I was using, this one just seems to work every time, like same way a socket works over a bolt. It just seems like a nice reliable engagement. Going over some of the other hard parts that could fail, you have this bellow, and it almost looks like a spring, but it's actually not a spring. It resembles one of those flexible exhaust bellows, and it can compress or it can expand, and you have this cap on the top of it that goes in there, and what's happening is it's using hydraulic fluid to pressurize that plunger to expand this out, and this is what does the pumping. And you could see these things, they resemble like a push rod, so it needs that hydraulic fluid in there to be able to work. I guess you could technically have scoring that develops along these little push rods, if you will, or the cylinder, if you will, that it rides in. Another thing that could technically fail would be the bearings inside of here, or develop scoring on this part, but it all seems pretty unlikely. The first thing that seems to really want to go in these is this little O-ring. And then obviously if the seal around this fails and it leaks oil and it gets air in there, air can compress, fluid cannot. So it's pumping air. Think about like air in your brake lines, or if you've ever bled a clutch, you got to get the air out of the system for the hydraulics to work, because it's just compressing the air otherwise, but it can't compress the hydraulic fluid itself. So if the oil level gets too low in here and it gets air inside of there, and what I see happening is the fuel pushes past those O-rings, dilutes this oil, thins it out, which makes it easier for it to leak past this input seal. It also compromises the integrity of this input seal. It can compromise the integrity of this diaphragm inside of here, or it can compromise the integrity of the seal where this is kind of just pressed in there. It also, you could have these O-rings on this fuel control solenoid fail. So you see that there's 2 holes on one side of the O-ring, 2 holes on the other side, or 4 holes rather. But if that O-ring fails, then this can no longer block off or direct the fluid, or the fuel rather, where it needs to go. But yeah, it all seems like it's a rather robust pump. It's a rather robust design, aside from just these fucking O-rings failing. So this is what I was talking about when I said I was pressurizing this part and air was coming out through there, bubbles. Seems like it's holding now. So it's looking like I have about 14.5 millimeters of travel on there, which I believe is pretty good. I think like 20 or beyond, it's pretty much lost too much oil. And the last thing I need to do, I'm gonna try it with these O-rings that I got from Harbor Freight. The ones that I bought from McMaster, they're just too thin. They're 1 millimeter. So I'm going to try to order some 2 millimeter versions of these. But I am going to try it with the O-rings from this assortment and see if it holds.